What's going on YouTube? OCD for EDC here. And what I got for your face balls today is an epic knife strife between these two guys right here. This is the stock Benchmade Bugout, the 535, the OG. And this here is the brand new Houge Deka. And this one happens to be model number 24273. This is the blue, they call it, I think it's Lava G10, Lava Mascus or something. I don't know what they're, it's layered G10. So anyway, so this will serve as kind of a review of the Houge Deka, and really what I'm going to be hopefully trying to get across here is the differences between these two knives and why one may be better than the other, or yeah, they're so close in so many ways, and I think it's a pretty interesting comparison. And so we're going to get into it. We're going to tear into these things completely from every single angle and look at what makes them spectacular, or maybe where some of one or the other has some shortcomings, and yeah, the good, the bad, and everything in between. So let's get into it here. So right off the bat, we're going to do, I'm not going to do any size comparisons with any other knives, but we'll talk about the dimensions on these two guys right here. So not looking at anyone else's data, I actually physically measured every aspect of these two knives, and so I'm going to break it down and give you some dimensions here. So starting out, overall length of the Bugout is 7.435 inches. The Deka, 7.476. So it is slightly longer, just ever so slightly. So both knives, the handle dimension in length is 4.230. So both knives have identical handle length. The blade length on the Benchmade Bugout is 3.205. The blade length on the Houge Deka is 3.246. So then we get to handle height. So both knives up here in this dimension right here at the handle's tallest point, the Benchmade Bugout, right here, it measures 1.05. And then in its narrower spots, like here and back here, it measures 0.85. So that's your variance in the handle height. On the Houge Deka, at its tallest point right here, it measures 1.12 inches. And then at its narrowest point, which happens to be this kind of main forward choil area, or not forward choil, but main finger choil area here, it is 0.875. So the handle is slightly taller in this dimension on the Deka. All right, so blade height. So from the top of the old mohawk here on the Deka, you have 0.975, and at its tallest point on the Bugout is 0.963. So again, very, very similar. And then we have handle thickness. So in this dimension here, you can see that the Deka is much thicker than the Benchmade. Try to hold these guys up. So the Benchmade measures 0.408 in thickness here on the handle. That's not measuring the access bar, that's just the handle scales themselves. And then on the Houge Deka, handle thickness is 0.435. So you got about 30 thousandths thicker here on the handle. Blade stock thickness. On the Benchmade Bugout, this particular example right here measures 89 thousandths, or 0.089. On the Houge Deka, it measures 92 thousandths, so 0.092. On the cutting edge, the length of the cutting edge, so measuring from the tip to the sharpening choil on both of these guys, On the Benchmade, you have a cutting length of 3.08. On the Houge Deka, you have a cutting length of 3.18. So a little bit longer cutting edge on the Houge. And then you have behind the edge thickness. Both of these are very thin blade stock, which I love to see. I mean, first and foremost, these are knives. They are supposed to cut things. But even though that both of these have very, very thin blade stock, neither one of them are ground super aggressively. So both of them are flat ground blades. You do see here on the Benchmade, you do have a taller flat grind, sorry. And the blade on the Houge is just depending on your style, maybe a little prettier. It's got a little bit more going on with the larger swedge. You do have a little bit of a swedge up here on the Bugout, but the Bugout certainly is a little not quite as flashy. So on the Houge, this thing measures 22 thousandths behind the edge, and on the Bugout, this particular one right here measures 18 thousandths behind the edge. So what that is, and I can show you here how I measure these. So what I'm doing is measuring just behind the secondary bevel, about right in that area. So it's kind of hard to do on camera, but trust me when I tell you, this one, the Bugout is 18 thousandths behind the edge, and the Houge is 22 thousandths. So that's one of the areas that I'm a little disappointed in both of these knives. To me, neither one of these are intended to be some crazy hard use knife, and no real people, or at least in my opinion, I guess, whatever, to each their own. Everybody's out doing their own thing, but nobody's taking one of these guys and batoning it, or which I don't even understand batoning anyway. You need small sticks for a fire. Get small sticks and then throw bigger wood on the fire as it starts to get going. I wasting energy batoning wood is just, yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's a whole different discussion. But so really the last measurement that makes any sense here is the weight. So Benchmade Bugout coming in at a svelte 1.886 or 1.886 ounces, and the Houge Deka coming in at 2.588. So there you go. Definitely the difference in materials here. With the Houge, you have a slightly thicker blade stock, but most of that weight is coming from the handle. You have much thicker slabs of G10 here, instead of the Grivery or Grivery or whatever they call fancy plastic that Benchmade's using here on the stock Bugout model. And you do have, some other things going on here. You've got this little block off plate and the extra screws, all that stuff's going to add up. But yeah, we'll get into that. So overall, the differences in the knives material wise, you have layered G10 handle scales over here, and you have a 20 CV blade steel. And this is an Alan Eichowitz design, and, beautifully made. Of course, both of these, for if somebody's been living under a rock, both of these are USA made knives, Benchmade and Houge, both US made, both, really well respected companies. Benchmade obviously has been in the knife game much longer than Houge has, but both are definitely great American companies and put out really fantastic and, super high quality products. So on the stock 535 Bugout, you're looking at S30V. And so between the very thin plastic handles on the Bugout, that's where you're getting that extra weight savings. So one of the interesting things that I did with these knives, and you can see here that I have one set up for right carry and one set up for left, because I've carried these together and used them on and off for the last several days. And putting them head to head, the other thing that lended me the ability to running into friends, family, different people, and I would hand them these two knives and ask them to tell me which one they liked better and why. And when I say that I handed these to people, I didn't hand these to knife people. I just handed these to just average people that have no idea what the difference between S30V and 20CV is. They don't know what G10 is versus Grivery. And so, although some of these people that I did hand them to had certainly heard of Benchmade and even Houge, they're not into knives like I'm sure everybody that's going to be watching this video is. So it was really interesting to hear their answers. One of the things that I got that I thought was pretty interesting is that kind of the common consensus is everyone thought that the Houge was the more expensive knife. That was one of the questions that I asked each of these people, which one do you feel is more expensive? And everyone felt the Houge was more expensive, but not because of materials. Again, I'm telling you, none of these folks are nerds like I am and care about blade steel and all that stuff. They could feel that, they just expressed that it felt like it was a higher quality product versus the Benchmade. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Most people, just in their mind, they associated the extreme lightweightness of this knife with it being cheap. So price is one thing that we didn't talk about here. For those that don't know, if you've been living under a rock, the stock 535 Bugout at any dealer, I think they have them listed at $119. And the Houge Deka, which, is kind of hard to get because they keep selling out so fast. But the Houge Deka, this particular model right here with the stonewash blade comes in at $140.21. So, really we're looking at, $21.21 difference in cost here. And, certainly there's a huge materials upgrade going to the Houge. But in their closed condition here, both are very, very similar in footprint as far as what you're going to get in your pocket. You can see, it's kind of hard to hold them, but you can see here, down here, the Bugout is a little bit wider down in this area. But then if I flip them over, again, it's kind of hard for me to show this off, but you can see here that the Houge, the mohawk area with the jimping, the thumb ramp area is kind of sticks out ever so slightly. Very, very similar footprint in the pocket. And then, of course, on the Benchmade, it comes with the sweet little deep carry pocket clip, which is a great pocket clip. I definitely like this pocket clip. Out of the two knives, when it comes to pocket clip, it's not even close. The Bugout wins that 10 out of 10 times. The Houge clip, although it does go in and out of pocket well, I do not like the fact that it is not deep carry. I think this, this absolutely should have a fold over clip that has holes in it for the screws or whatever. Obviously, it would be easy for the aftermarket to do that. And with the way this knife is selling, I'm sure we're going to start seeing aftermarket support very, very soon for this knife. So, yeah, hopefully somebody comes out with a really cool pocket clip design for this thing. Functionally, the clip works fine. It goes in and out of pocket just fine. The one thing I did notice with this knife, and I don't know, I know some other guys have put up reviews and stuff on this knife already, and that's, I really wanted to try to do something a little different here and not just do a simple review of the Deka. One of the things that I noticed about this knife, you can see these little cutaways on the thumb stud, and they're not sharp or uncomfortable. To use as a thumb stud, it works fantastic. They work great. They grip your thumb well. All that's fine. They're comfortable. I have zero complaints there. But when you do feel them, they do feel a little bit sharp, but not in an uncomfortable way. Where this was an issue or a problem was pulling this knife out of my pocket. It almost, apparently, I don't, I'm sure they didn't intend it to be this way, but it acted like a wave feature, and it would catch on the hem of my pants, as I'm pulling it out, and it would flip the blade open. Certainly, if I pulled it fast, it would do it every single time. Every time it would flip that blade open. Now, there's a couple things going on there. As you can see, I'm holding the knife just like this, and I'm not putting hardly any pressure at all, and this thing comes out easily. There's just not much spring tension there to keep the knife in. It's not really a detent. You're overcoming the able lock on this guy, that spring pressure to push that lock bar back in order to get the blade to come out, but it comes out easily. And so that was something that I noticed right off the bat. As soon as I started carrying this thing, it was like the second time I pulled it out of my pocket. These are just grippy enough, and the fact that they have those three little, half circles or half holes, it just gives a lot of edges for material to grab onto. So, would those wear down a little with time and maybe not be so grippy? Possibly. I've only had this guy for a couple of weeks now, so it's still pretty new, although I have carried it quite a bit in that time frame. So anyway, it's definitely something to think about. And, I'm sure your pants and there's all sorts of variables there, and other people's experience may be different. That's what my experience has been so far. And if I'm sitting down and go to remove the knife from my pocket, then it does it pretty much every single time. So it's just something that I've gotten used to. And so as I'm pulling the knife out of my pocket, I put my finger here to keep the blade from starting to deploy as it comes out. So, it's not a wonderful, if unless you're super tactical and all Ernie Emersoned out and whatever, and expecting to wave your knife every single time you pull it out, it's not generally a good thing to have the blade hanging half open as you just pull the knife out of your pocket. So anyway, it's something to think about. So on the bug out, you can see that the thumb studs are made in a very similar way, where they've got the concentrical circles that are kind of stepping down its diameter as they get taller, but they didn't put those three half holes in there, which, I think the thumb studs look good. I actually like these thumb studs better. They're easier to get to. You have a little more space in there. It's just, coming out of your pocket, they definitely grab the material. Now, they do not stick out past the sides of the G10, but they are a little way, there is some distance there between the G10 scale and the side of the thumb stud, so they're very easy to get into. So on the bug out, you can see the thumb studs are slightly taller than the sides of the scale. So, again, easy to get to, but yeah, just something to think about. The other thing that I like about the Houge better, as well as what most people said to me, now a lot of people didn't notice this right off the bat until I mentioned to them to look at it in the closed position. So one of the things that I've never really cared for with the bug out is this open area right here. It's just an aesthetic thing. It's not like it hurts anything or it really matters much at all. But I definitely like the look of the Houge better, that it doesn't have this gap. It just looks a little strange. And, they could have done something a little different there by moving, or, I don't know, moving that stop pin, or having the stop pin go into a little channel into the blade and have the top of the blade come back further, or whatever. There's ways around that, but it just kind of looks a little bit strange in the closed position. So there, I think the Houge is a little bit, just a little better fit and finish all the way around, with attention to detail on those types of things. However, then there's other areas where the fit and finish is not as good. So, for anybody that's had a Benchmade Bugout apart, you're familiar with the little half liners. You can see the liners sticking up there where the jimping is, and you've got this metal structure in here that supports all the mechanism for the access lock. And this metal half liner comes back, and this screw here is holding that liner in, and the liner stops like right here. So one of the things is, and I'm going to see if I can attempt to show this off here. Let me get a light in there. If you can see it. Well, so hopefully you can see there where the steel stops. But what you can see is that the screws are not sticking through. You don't really see the ends of the screws coming through the liners. However, if we take a look at the copious amount of screws on the Deka, and maybe the Deka stands for the 10 screws that are in this thing. There, I don't know how well you guys can see that, but you can see there the head, or the ends of the screws sticking through, and there's 4 of them. You got those 2 there, and you got 2 more right there, and both of them stick through like I don't know, a little over 2 threads. So so that to me is a fit and finish thing. They could have made the screws exactly the right length like Benchmade did, which would have looked a little nicer, and you wouldn't have seen there. You can see all 4 screws sticking in right there. So yeah, I'm really nitpicking here, but it's just something that I noticed. The other thing is that on my particular Deka, it does have quite a bit of lock stick. And let me see if I'm going to be quiet here. I don't know if you guys could hear that or not. I'm going to do it by the microphone here. So on mine, it definitely has lock stick. Now, I expect that it will go away. It certainly has gotten better with carrying it, but it's still there. And it's not a huge deal. I've never not been able to unlock it, but it definitely does have lock stick. Now, the other thing is if I do not pull the lock bar back and I open or close the knife, the Houge is buttery smooth. I mean, just you can feel the lock bar riding on the tang of the blade, and it is just glassy smooth. Not so. Now, I do not have lock stick on the Bugout, but if I unlock it and leave the spring tension there, this is not glassy smooth. It is okay, and it's better opening than it is closing, but it just feels like these two surfaces are kind of grinding on each other, if you will. So anyway, just differences in the way the mechanism works. The Houge is glassy smooth, but does have a little lock stick. Now, when we look at the finishing on the blade, you can see here on the Houge that it has a really, really nice stone wash. And of course, they do have their logo there. It says USA, Deka. And then on the backside, you just have the Elishewitz and CPM 20 CV. On the Benchmade, you have the S30V right up here by the thumb stud. And then on the opposite side, you have the butterfly tack stamp. So, where you can tell a large difference here, with both blades being stone washed, you can see which one is, just prettier. I mean, the Houge is just a prettier knife. So on the Benchmade, they did not polish all the grind lines out of it. So although it is stone washed, you can still see the grind marks. You can really see them up here on the flats, but you can also see them, if the lighting's correct, all throughout the primary grind of the knife. So although it feels smooth and glassy, it's not quite as pretty as the Deka. The Deka stone wash is beautifully done. The sharpening or the secondary bevel on the Deka was also beautifully done. They did just ever so slightly miss the sharpening choil here. So there is, it's kind of hard to tell here, but there is just the faintest hint of a smile there at the end of the blade. Pretty standard. Why everybody has a hard time with that, I have no idea. It seems pretty straightforward to me. Actually, you can see the line here on the Benchmade. They just had to carry that out past that line. If they would have just ground off just that much right there, it would have been perfect. But anyway, so you can see here that this is a pretty toothy edge on the bug out. And this particular one I have not sharpened. So that's just the way it came from the factory. And I haven't sharpened either of these knives. So it's just a finer edge on the Houge. The Houge came screaming sharp right out of the box. Certainly a much nicer factory edge on the Houge. So one of the things, and holy shit, I didn't want this video to go this long, but one of the things I want to show real quick here, I have not taken this Houge apart yet, but I figured it would be interesting to just see the construction differences in these two knives. So the Houge is all T8 construction, which is fantastic. So T8 pivot, T8 body screws, and you've got these 3 barrel spacers across the rear. But really nicely done. And I have heard a few people talk about the quality of the springs on the Houge for the Able lock. Apparently, they're supposed to be nicer quality screws than what Benchmade, or I'm sorry, not screws, nicer quality springs than what Benchmade uses in their access locks. I will tell you, now that I'm looking at this, there's definitely a difference in screw length. So the longer one right there, this longer one here goes into the backs, or the barrel spacers, back spacers, or the standoffs, and this here are the screws that are in the center going into the scales. So, or holding the little half liner in. So here is the Houge Deka. Like I said, this is the first time I have opened this thing up. So you can see there's some assembly grease from the factory. And then you've got similar construction where the Benchmade, you've got screws going into that stop pin. The stop pin is held in place with those little half liners. But you can see very similar build on the Omega Springs. So yeah, nicely done. Looks good. And so on the Benchmade, you have got T10 on the pivot, and then everything else is T6. So I should have thought about this and probably put the clip back over, because in order to get to the rear back spacer, on if you are taking off the clip side, you got to take the pocket clip off just to be able to access that one screw right there. The pocket clip covers it up. So otherwise you would not have to take the pocket clip off because it's not screwing into anything on the opposite side of the knife. Trying to do this quickly in the interest of not having a movie here. I'm not a movie producer, so but I did want to just show the difference here between these two knives. All right, so here's what we got. So there's your construction. You can see both utilizing a D shape on the pivot, which is great. I don't know how well you can see that, but so the D shape is right on this side here on the Benchmade, and the D shape is on this side here on the Houge. You can see the springs. These are actually aftermarket springs here, so they're a little kind of like a bronzish color, and they were a little fatter in diameter. than the stock Benchmade spring. So if you want to see how to replace springs in a access lock knife, I did put a video up about that. But one of the interesting parts here is just how much further the loop is on the Houge springs. So all the Benchmade access lock springs that I've had that have broken have been right here. They break in the middle of this large sweeping bend. And you can see here on the Houge, having that be a much larger radius will just help not put that spring in such a bind. Because when you go to push this down, you are pinching that spring and tightening up the radius of that spring. So that's what's happening there. So you can see it doesn't change much on the Houge when you try and do that. Now on the Benchmade, let's see if we can do this. Oh, yeah, I kind of figured that was going to pop out of there. But you can see here, you know, there's quite a bit of difference in those two springs. So that's interesting. It'll be interesting to see if Houge starts having spring failures similar to what Benchmade has experienced. But I definitely like the fact that it's a much larger radius. I think that will help quite a bit in making those springs last longer. So anyway, guys, this video's already gone 30 minutes. Actually, it's over 30 minutes now. Holy shit. So sorry about all that. I didn't mean to make this a crazy long video, but I did just want to talk about these. The other thing that I did want to touch on it's something that happens with all access lock or bearing locks from Spyderco is, I don't know if anyone else out there has done this, but cutting your palm when you go to flip the knife back down. And I'll show you what I'm talking about here, but it's something that I've experienced with actually both of these knives sitting in front of us here. I did it with the Deka, I think on day 2 of having the knife. I did it with the Benchmade, the Bugout, the very first time I opened it, or first time I closed it, I should say. And so it's something that I've done over the years. I couldn't tell you how many times with access lock or bearing lock. Now, the Spyderco Mannix does not have near the blade to handle ratio that these little knives do. But this Deka kind of exacerbates the problem with its design. And I'm going to show you as soon as I get these screws in here. Bear with me just a second. But for anyone that has ever, like I said, cut their palm with an access lock or access like lock, because I think, you know, most people when they use the access lock, all right, I've got the pivot screw just slightly too tight here. All right, so I'll fine tune it later, but anyway, so when you go, and yeah, you can actually see a mark right there from me cutting myself. So in order to pull the access lock back, most people put this part of the knife in the palm of their hand and push against it. So you're pulling, you know, down this way. Now, Houge did, personally, I wish they would put some effective jimping or something, anything back here to provide some nice traction. And the fact that Houge made this angle such that it is, and there is no effective traction back here at all, the way that I've been dealing with this is utilizing the pocket clip to hold that with my pinky into my palm, and then when I swing it down, it works out okay. However, if I have it like this and I push it in, you can see there that the blade is actually going to hit my skin as it comes out. Or yeah, I can't even open it right now because the blade hits my skin. So, it's something that I wish that all access, any type of bar lock like this, whether it's the, Spyderco bearing lock, whatever. I know I'm not the only person that's ever done this. I don't know how widespread the problem is, but certainly it's something that I've done many times over the years with all sorts of different knives. If you have really, uh, you know, what I would consider to be great blade to handle ratio, because I really like, I don't want any Cali legal knives that have a 1 inch blade and a 4 inch handle or anything like that. So this is not something I'm bitching. I like the fact that the blade goes all the way to the end of the handle. However, offering just some nice positive traction, something right back here on this corner, so you don't have to dig this into your hand so hard to pull that lock bar back. Um, yeah, it would be nice. So, like I said, it's something that I've done with the Bugout and with the Deka both. I've done it with a couple different Spyderco models over the years that are running the axe or the ball bearing lock, and yeah, it's just something that happens with access lock knives and or bar lock, whatever you want to call this kind of lock. Um, yeah, it's just one of the traits of those knives. I do love this lock. It's perfectly ambidextrous. That part's great because I'm constantly using right or left hand. I'm actually left-handed, but I use my right hand all the time, so I'm really ambidextrous. But anyway, um, yeah, the access lock is fantastic for that. I love the thumb studs. You can finger flick it. You can do all the right things, or you can just whip the blade out like that. Sorry, trying to do this on camera. But anyway, guys, sorry to make this video so long. There was just a lot to talk about with these knives. I really wanted to show off the way they were constructed. So so overall, if I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask, which one do I think's the better knife? Personally, for the money, I think the Houge is the better buy. I think it is better materials. It feels better in hand. The ergonomics are good. I do like the jimping on the top of the blade and the little thumb ramp. You also get a little bit of a poon there, which always got to love the poon. Um, and I just feel it just feels higher quality. Uh, However, with all that being said, the Bugout is a fantastic knife that I really enjoy, that I have loved since the first one that I ever got, and they are just a really really good quality knife that you can get into a Benchmade for, well, as far as I know, it's still Benchmade's cheapest knife as well. I'm confident of that, which is great. And the fact that the thing just goes in the pocket so well, I'm not going to worry about putting it back together on camera. Um, but the pocket, it goes in the pocket so well, and the pocket clip on the Bugout is awesome. It's one of the best pocket clips ever, and that's really my only complaint with the Houge, is that I'm not a huge fan of the pocket clip. I'm sure the aftermarket's going to take care of that very, very quickly. So, anyway, guys, like I said, for the money, I think the Houge Deka is a better buy for the materials. Um, I wish that both of them would be thinner behind the edge. I would love to see both of these knives be in the 10 to 12 thousandths range behind the edge, and actually make these things perform the way that they should, in my opinion, with this really nice thin blade stock. And yeah, so certainly both could have some improvements, but both are really great knives. Both come from really great companies, and I guess I'm torn between them. There's things that I love about both, and so my recommendation would be to buy the one that makes you happy, and buy one of each, and set one up right-handed, set one up left-handed, and swap them around and try them out and see which one you like best. They're both great knives. So anyway, guys, I hope this was interesting and fun. I hope you enjoyed this knife Strife here, and I will put some links down below. People have been asking me where I got this spring from and for some other items. So I will put some links down below for some of those things. But anyway, guys, thanks a lot, and we will talk to you next time.